Hello and welcome back, everybody. Today we are discussing this guy. Somewhat simple, yet still a little bit confusing. So let's go ahead and I will explain it the best I can. So the basics of the comparator are this. It always outputs the same signal strength it receives. It's got one primary input in the back and two secondary inputs out each side. So if we flip this lever, that becomes 15, 14, 13, meaning this comparator will output 13. As for the inputs on the side, it compares the side inputs to the main input, and if the side inputs are stronger, it will not output anything. If they are equal to or weaker, it will. So if I flip this one, that's 15, 14, 13, 12, that will still output 13. However, if I flip this switch, that's 15, 14, that becomes stronger, the comparator will output nothing. Then the comparator has a second mode called the subtract mode. So if I flip this one, that's 15, 14, 13, 12, this one's 13, it will still put an output, but it only outputs 1 because it's taking the 13 minus the 12, and it only outputs 1. As I mentioned in my last redstone video, comparators can take a signal out of a storage container, such as a chest. The strength of the signal is dependent on how full the container is. So if you look here, it looks at how full each stack of the container is. So if you look here, this is one full stack. This is also a full stack because both stack in stacks of 1. Whereas that would be a half a stack. You couldn't get a half a stack on a boat. If I took out the half a stack, you saw the signal dropped. And if we fill this right up, you'll see it goes all the way up to 15 if it wants to cooperate. There we go. Goes all the way to 15 when the chest is full. Now, chests aren't the only thing that comparators can take signal strengths from. Here we have every item listed. So, obviously, we have the chests, the trap chests, the barrels, minecart with chests, and minecart with hoppers if they're on a detector rail, hoppers, dispensers and droppers, beehives, shulker boxes. It will take from a jukebox as well. It will also take from a composter, furnaces, smokers, blast furnaces, brewing stands. And as I mentioned in the last redstone video, it will take from a lectern, and it will depend on what page you're on and how many pages there are for the output strength there. Then we get into some of the weird ones. We have cauldrons, ender blocks, cake for some reason, and here we have an item frame, and it will give out a different signal strength depending on which way the item is facing. Now I feel I may have gone over the main and secondary inputs as well as subtract mode a little bit quickly, so I'm going to elaborate here just a little bit. If I flip this lever, that comparator has a signal strength of 15. If I flip this lever, this side has a signal strength of 11. That means we still get an output of 15 because 15 is stronger than 11. It's worth noting that these two side inputs do not add together. So if I flip this one, they do not overpower 15, even though together they would. They are treated as two separate inputs. Subtract mode is relatively easy to understand, but there is one key difference here. If I flip this lever, as you can see, there's 15 here. There's also 15 going into the side. With the comparator on main mode, it will still output 15 because these two signal strengths are equal. But if I put this on subtract mode, it will subtract 15, so we get no output. I do hope that made sense. If you're still a little bit iffy on it, I would suggest you go into a creative mode and just play with the comparator a little bit until you figure it all out. Now, we're going to jump into some of the things that you can do with comparators. So if I flip that signal right there, you can see the signal flashes. So how this works is we have a comparator that is in subtract mode. So what happens is this signal strength is 15, so this will output 15. This becomes 14, 13. 13 gets subtracted from 15, so this only puts out 1, 2, meaning this one is no longer being subtracted from 15, and the signal strength goes back to 15, and what you get is this flashing circuit. Now this ties into one of my favorite circuits, useful for turning a steady input into a pulse. See, if I flip this lever here, that's a steady input, but it does shut off over here. So how this works is you have a signal that comes in. So we have 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, and 10 going into this comparator. However, this one is 15 because this repeater will always output 15 even if it receives a signal strength of 1. You run that through a 3 or 4 tick. So after those 3 to 4 ticks, it will shut the comparator off. So if you're working on a redstone build that needs to turn a steady signal into a pulse, that is how you do it. This is another fairly basic circuit with a comparator. This is an auto dropper. So, as you can see, if I throw some items into that dropper, it will repeatedly drop them onto the ground. How this works is this comparator takes a signal from this dropper. Because there's items in it, it hard powers this block, which of course powers this dust and this dust. This dust powers this block, which bud powers this dropper, causing an item to be dropped. This dust powers this block with a strength of 15, which turns this repeater on, which puts this signal strength as 15, causing this comparator to turn off. Of course, then there's no power going to either of those dusts, so the comparator turns back on, and what you get is a flashing signal that continually drops items out. This is a fairly basic auto dropper, but we can improve on this. So, this again is an auto dropper. I can throw items in here, and they will drop out pretty quickly. How this works is, once again, this comparator is taking a signal from this dropper, which powers this 4-tick repeater, which goes into this dust and into this block. That powers this sticky piston, which pushes this observer forward, which creates an observer clock, hard powering this block repeatedly, so it dispenses all the items, and as you can see, this works at about twice the rate the other one does. Now, taking this concept a little bit further, we have this contraption here. This is a dropper tower that can be used to transport items up a dropper tower with a maximum height of 3 droppers. How this works is if I throw items in this dropper here, this comparator is taking the signal strength from this dropper through this block. Because there's items in this dropper, the comparator turns on, powers this repeater, which hard powers this block. That powers this piston and creates this observer clock. This observer clock hard powers this block repeatedly. Because this dropper is hard powered, it's also going to power this dropper and this dropper, which means items will be flowing up into this chest. That is going to conclude today's comparator video. If you enjoyed this video, consider hitting that like button. If you want to see more videos like this, I do redstone tutorials on Wednesdays. I also have a Minecraft Let's Play series with videos coming out on Mondays for those. If that kind of content is something you like, hit that subscribe button and be sure to catch it. And if you want to see me stream live, follow me on Twitch, and there's a link for that in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.